Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, today we're going to do something incredibly fun and honestly, deeply fascinating. We're going to completely deconstruct what looks like a super simple children's story, Trash Truck, Donnie and Walter's Surprising Day, just to reveal the absolute masterclass in narrative arc that's hiding right beneath its charming little surface. I mean, sure, on the surface, it's a cute story about a couple of animal friends, but when you really dig into the source material, it's actually this incredibly sophisticated look at routine, isolation, and the transformative power of unexpected connection. We're going to break down 5 very specific sentences from this story to show you exactly how this narrative is built from the ground up.
But before we really jump in, I want you to think for a second about how easy it is for literally any of us to get stuck in our adult comfort zones. You know the drill, right? You wake up, you do your routine, you go to work, you come home. It feels completely safe. But it can also become entirely isolated. This question perfectly sets the stage for our 2 protagonists. We might think we're just analyzing a kid's book today, but I promise you, Donnie and Walter's situation is going to feel surprisingly relatable to anyone who's ever built a perfectly comfortable, but ultimately kind of lonely little bubble for themselves.
So let's dive into Section 1, Status Quo, Establishing the Norm. Every great narrative arc has to start by showing us the normal world before it gets turned completely upside down, and our source text does this with just incredible efficiency. Here's our first focus sentence from the text. Donnie and Walter were creatures of habit. They did the same thing every day. The source material introduces Donnie and Walter by immediately highlighting their strict, unwavering adherence to a daily schedule. And visually, the story shows us this routine in amazing detail, like sleeping out in a tent at night and then meticulously brushing and flossing their teeth. They have built this highly regimented life together.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the safety of their isolated comfort zone. I mean, creatures of habit is a phrase we use all the time, right? But in this context, it takes on a really clever double meaning. While the literal definition applies to their predictable actions, doing the exact same things in the exact same order, it also highlights that they're existing in a totally closed loop. They are comfortable, for sure, but absolutely nothing new is entering their world. Moving right along to Section 2, Comedy of Context, Visuals versus Text. As we get into this next part of the story, let's examine our second focus sentence. Each day, they would start with a little breakfast and a little morning exercise. Now, if you just listen to those words out of context, it sounds like a description of a very refined, healthy, almost aristocratic morning routine. A little breakfast, a brisk walk perhaps. But the visuals from the source material tell a completely, hilariously different story.
You just have to appreciate the deadpan earnestness here. Their clever and crafty morning routine actually consists of diving headfirst into garbage cans to find old apple cores for breakfast. And that little morning exercise? Yeah, that's literally them running for their absolute lives from a giant swarm of bees. And when the text casually mentions running errands and taking care of important business, the visuals actually show them stacking up inside a giant trench coat as a disguise just to go buy ice cream. The text is playing it completely straight, while the characters are surviving purely on animal instinct and slapstick comedy. It's such a brilliant storytelling device that keeps the audience hooked.
Which brings us to Section 3, Void of Loneliness, Looking for Friends.
But here's the thing. Even the most cleverly crafted routine, complete with finding discarded food and relaxing by the pool, eventually reveals a really profound void. A routine can keep you busy, sure, but it can't keep you fulfilled. And this brings us to our third focus sentence, which introduces the core conflict of our hero's journey. Donnie and Walter thought they had life all figured out except when it came to finding friends to play with. Suddenly, the comedic tone shifts to something way more poignant. They've mastered their survival, they've mastered their routine, but they face this deep, existential longing for true connection. This is the crack in their perfect armor.
The source material contrasts this beautifully. On one side, we have the illusion of perfection, having life all figured out. But on the other side, the heavy reality of their loneliness sets in. The visual cues in the story are just heartbreakingly funny. You've got Donnie sitting on a teeter-totter, but he's way too light to make it move with Walter, or trying to jump rope but literally having no one to hold the other end. Despite checking every nook and cranny, they come up entirely empty-pod. Conventional avenues fail them completely. Some people already had friends, some liked being alone, and the neighborhood dogs, yeah, they just barked unfriendly right at them. They are trying so hard to fit into a world that doesn't quite have a space for them.
All right, Section 4, Turning Point, Unexpected Change.
Just when they think the right friends simply aren't out there, when they've seemingly exhausted every single option and are ready to just resign themselves back to their isolated bee-running routine, the narrative hits its inciting incident. This builds to a really crucial question in our analysis. When you've looked high and low, when you've tried the playground, when you've tried the neighborhood, and absolutely nothing works, where do real friends actually come from? It creates this wonderful dramatic pause in the narrative before the ultimate reveal.
And boom, here's our fourth focus sentence. But then, everything changed in an instant, and some real friends came along when they least expected it. Notice the specific language here, in an instant and least expected. True connection, the story is arguing, cannot be scheduled or forced into a neat little daily routine. It arrives as a total disruption. In this case, the disruption is the arrival of the giant, hugging trash truck and his friend Hank. It's a massive, literal vehicle of change that scoops them up into a giant embrace.
And finally, Section 5, Surprising Normal, Breaking the Loop.
We have now arrived at the final stage of our narrative arc. The disruption has happened, the connection has been made, and our characters have to somehow synthesize their old life with their brand new reality. Let's unpack our fifth and final focus sentence. With Trash Truck and Hank, every day became a surprising new adventure and nothing was ever the same again. The absolute key word here is surprising. They went from being creatures of habit, doing the exact same thing every single day, to living a life of unpredictable adventure. The transformative power of unexpected friendship has fundamentally shifted their entire reality. The loop has officially been broken.
This slide perfectly summarizes their transformation. They experienced these really beautiful changes, getting giant hugs from Trash Truck and actually coming inside a human house to eat pizza together. I mean, that is a massive upgrade from garbage can apple cores. However, the story ends on a wonderfully charming, grounding reality. The text notes that almost nothing changed regarding their core animal nature. The visuals show them hiding behind a bush with a roll of toilet paper to take care of their business. It's such a hilarious reminder that while connection totally changes your worldview, it doesn't entirely erase who you fundamentally are.
So, the crucial point to take away from this entire explainer isn't just about a bear and a raccoon finding a truck. It's really about being open to disruption. Look outside your carefully curated, perfectly safe daily routines. Ask yourself who or what might be waiting out there to bring a surprising new adventure into your own life. Because sometimes the connections we need the absolute most are the ones that arrive when we least expect them in the most unconventional packages. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope you'll look at your own daily habits and maybe your kids' books a little bit differently today.